Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? It's Geoff Mosher and Adam Caplan. And let us just say right now, if you are listening to this podcast on Christmas morning, Christmas Day, on Hanukkah morning, Hanukkah Day, or any holiday of worship that you pledge your allegiance to, well, Adam and I thank you because that's pretty special that you've taken out time of
Yeah.
your special holy day to listen to this podcast. Because, Adam, we've got a lot to get into. And I really also hope that the 24-hour rule has been in place for most fans. It was getting pretty vicious Sunday night, Monday night, penalties. Referees caught. Oh, Greg Olson. Greg Olson caught some shrapnel, my friend.
Yeah.
Holy cow. I hope
He's funny on
everybody is
Twitter.
relaxed now. It's just
Yeah,
one loss.
by the way, Olsen responded on X. He was aware of it. It was
He
pretty
shouldn't have
funny.
done that. I love Greg Olson. I thought he
I
was fine.
know.
He didn't need to, because when you
I
respond, it almost makes you look
yeah.
like you think you're guilty of something.
Yeah, he goes, I love Eagle fans, and he went on. You can see the post on X. I know Greg a little bit. He really good dude. He just look at people had their issues with Joe Davis, the play-by-play voice of that game. Greg is a color analyst for that game, and he's really good, by the way. He just
They're both.
yeah.
I didn't have any issues with how
Yeah.
they called the game. I don't think they were unfair. I don't think we're. I'm surprised to see. Listen, I get it from fans. I mean, you got some media whining about it. Like, come on, it's
Well, I think what happened is Joe Davis didn't really acknowledge much the Hurts concussion,
yeah.
and that people put it out rightfully so. I saw what's out there, and I get it. But moving on, look, as you said, the players and coaches they have to have a 24-hour rule, whether it's a win or loss, particularly if it's a win,
Hmm.
because you got to move on and not get overconfident. And then actually, as we get to start, we actually got some good news, surprising news, and I learned my lesson thinking anything's final when the NFL thankfully announced that the Eagles Cowboys game was moved out of the 4:25 window to the 1 o'clock window, and that was very simple. Dallas was eliminated before their game Sunday night against the Bucks. How about
Yep.
that?
Yep. So we'll get into
Yeah.
that. We'll talk about this schedule change because something almost nearly happened that I predicted about this game.
Uh-oh.
That we'll talk about. We'll
All right.
get into some of the fallout from the first loss in September since week four. We'll address if we have any long or short term concerns, and then of course when you talk about short term concerns, you're always talking about injuries as well. We'll get into the injury situation for both teams. So again, happy holidays to everybody. Adam, the game against the Cowboys, you just mentioned it, moved from 4:25 to 1 o'clock, which, us media people always love the 1 o'clock games. It means we can get to the post game show. We can deliver all of our great content to our listeners and viewers early. And it's a meaningless game for the Cowboys, of course. The Eagles still need a win or a Washington loss
We're tie.
clinch or a
Eagles
tie to
tie.
clinch the
Yeah.
NFC East. And Washington plays the night game against the Atlanta Falcons. So here's what I said 5 weeks ago. I think it was, yeah, 5 weeks ago on the show that I do, the NFL weekend preview show. I preview all the games. I looked at the schedule and I said, hey, listen, don't be surprised if the Cowboys bring a 5-0 record in their last 5 games into Philadelphia, and all of a sudden that game gets a little interesting. All right. Well, they went 4-1. I got mocked in that for thinking in the comments for saying the Cowboys could go 5-0. They're terrible. They're trash. Yada yada. Listen, I knew they were getting healthier. I knew the schedule was pretty light, and I know
Yeah.
that the Cowboys have disappointed their own fans, the NFL, everybody, but they do have talent on that team, and they are honestly a terrible muffed punt against the Bengals away
Oh,
from being 5-0. So they were playing very hard. They were playing for their coach, you might say. They're playing to not be embarrassed. They beat Washington over Thanksgiving on that really wacky game with the onside kick return for time, and then the McLaurin late touchdown and all that. But they won that game and they've gone 4-1. So the question though, Adam, is now that they've been eliminated, which they are now finally technically eliminated and have nothing to play for, do they just roll over and die, which they've done before against the Eagles? So we'll have to see.
yeah, and we'll go over their injury situation and update it. Actually, it's really long, and it is, and you could criticize their schedule and all that, but beating the Bucks, who needed that game. By the way, the Bucks, because of that loss, and the Falcons to win over the awful Giants, the Giants, the most non-competitive team in the National Football League right now.
Mm-hmm.
The Falcons hold the tiebreakers. They've beaten the Bucks twice. Like, I can't believe this.
Oh man, the Bucks are
I'm
gonna
just,
kick themselves for that one.
yeah, I love watching Tampa. It's Baker's really balling. He's had a great year,
Yep.
but the back end of their defense just gives up too many plays. They're just not good enough on defense. But getting back to Dallas, yeah, that muff punt was ridiculous because they would have had the ball back and with a chance to win, would have been tied. And you said that they muffed it, and of course, Burrow scores late in the game.
Mm-hmm.
That game that's the one that cost them because they went into Carolina, they bombed the Panthers. They never trailed against the Bucks last Sunday night. That's which is impressive considering they knew before the game they were out.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, they actually won a home game. No, they actually won a home game. They only have two. They're 2-6. By the way, they were 5-2 on the road. Those
Mm-hmm.
Cowboys.
And by the way, you mentioned that Bengals game against the Cowboys. Don't look now, but there is a scenario. And it's not that, I mean, we've seen some really far-fetched scenarios in the past to make the playoffs, but the Bengals can still make the playoffs if they win out and if they just get Miami to lose a game or Indianapolis to lose a game, which is very possible. I think the most difficult thing is can they win out the Bengals? They've got the Broncos, I think, on deck here. And then I forget who they end the year up, probably an AFC North team. So that'll be difficult. They end the year against the Oh no, the Chiefs. They end the year against the Bengals and the Chiefs. But you know what? Nobody's really playing better than Joe Burrow and Jamar. It would be exciting to see the Bengals get that back end into that 7 seed, right? And then play the probably the Bills for the 2 seed in the first round. That would be exciting.
Yeah, and by the way, the Chargers and Broncos are they're 2 games up on the Bengals, but because the Bengals are live, they also have some sort of tiebreaker.
Right. The
So
Bengals
the
play
Bengals,
the Broncos this
yeah,
week, so that's one way to
yeah,
bridge one of
yeah,
those games.
yeah,
Yep.
exactly. They have to win out, one of those teams has got to lose out. So they're live, not by very much, but they're live. But Joe Burrow's carrying them. Their defense, if we went over, each team that's been disappointing this season, the Bengals are my top 4 or 5. Boy, their defense drop off this season. I just don't understand it. You can't. I know they've had some injuries in the back end, but they were bad the entire season. It's very
Right.
disappointing.
Right. By the way, I made a mistake. It was the Steelers. They end the Bengals will play the
Bengals. Okay.
Broncos and the Steelers. It's the
Ooh, good
Broncos
luck.
who end the year against the Chiefs. So the Broncos have to beat the Bengals and then the Chiefs to avoid getting kicked out by the Bengals. So this is a really exciting race for the 7th seed in the AFC.
Well, but again, there. So let me see. Oh yeah. So the Bengals are 2 games back of the Broncos, correct?
Right. So they play the Broncos this week.
Okay.
So then they have a chance to make it one game back. And then going into the final week, the Broncos have to play the Chiefs while the Bengals play the Steelers. So it'll make this obviously it could all be decided. It could be over by this coming Sunday.
Yeah.
But if this happens where the Bengals beat the Broncos and then you get Miami or Indianapolis, just one of them has to lose from a tiebreaker, then it's going to go into that final week and there'll be an opportunity for the Bengals to win it if the Broncos lose to the Chiefs and the Bengals beat the Steelers. So it's
Yeah.
fascinating
Yeah.
stuff.
And Denver choked last week. They against the Chargers. They were winning that game handily at halftime, and then they just fell off.
Yeah.
That was one of those teams. The odds makers they gave them a 5.5 win total
Uh-huh.
for future numbers. No, and it's like Minnesota got 6.5, depending on which book you looked at.
Yep.
There's stuff you just can't see, and that Denver's. I give Sean Payton credit. See, it's funny for Pro Football Writers Association. I was seriously thinking of Sean Payton for Coach of the Year,
Mm,
or Kevin O'Connell, who's obviously done an incredible job.
yeah.
But if Denver doesn't make it, I'm sure as hell not voting for him. But still, they've been
Yeah.
competitive.
Just from an unbiased, objective viewpoint, like who would I rather see in the 2-7 matchup in the AFC? Would I rather watch Broncos versus Bills or Bengals versus Bills? It's not even close. And I love the job that Peyton and Bo Nix have done, and they're well ahead, as you just said, of schedule, and they've been a good story. But I mean, just from what my eyes would like to see in a playoff game, yeah, I would like to see Josh Allen versus Joe Burrow. I don't think
Oh
there's any
yeah,
question
yeah,
nine out of 10
yeah.
people would like to see that, especially if the Bengals have won like the last 5 straight games to get in, just to get into the playoffs. That would be amazing.
It would. That'd be great football.
Yeah.
And one thing before we get started here, the Steelers are a great example of when you don't have your best pass target, you can't win. Their passing game is so bad without George Pickens.
It
It's actually
definitely is.
very hard to watch.
Mm-hmm.
It's a struggle bus, man. Mike Williams, like Mike Tomlin he has this, it's not a rule, it's like not a written rule, but he does not like playing players who come over in season or guys who are new to the team. Rookies, unless he has to play them.
Right.
And they're just for whatever reason, no matter how well Mike Williams doesn't practice, they just don't play him enough. He's not a factor. So when we talk about AJ Brown, as we send it back to the Eagles here, when and obviously Devontae Smith and when Dallas Goedert are healthy, it helps obviously tremendously. But when you're without one of the top three players at his position in the National Football League, in AJ Brown, it's really tough. Teams play you differently, and that's what the just to mention the Steelers, it's just so different without George Pickens. It's not even close.
All right, Adam, before we go on, we talk about the holidays, and holidays are a time that people come together. And when people get together for the holidays, they like to do something recreational. It might be the 2 days after Christmas or Hanukkah, or, you got a lot of family together in town and you want to do something. So Game Time makes it easier for everybody who's together this holiday season to go see a live event, whether it's a show, a concert, of course, a sporting event. You can catch an NBA game. You can catch a lot of different sports and shows, and you want to use the Game Time app because it's got Game Time picks that makes getting tickets for live events even easier. Game Time picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Adam, I was on the Game Time app and I was looking New Year's Eve, Atlantic City, Mr. Worldwide, Pitbull. I don't know if people can see that. Pitbull is coming. And people love Pitbull, Adam. I don't know if you're a Pitbull fan, but he is Mr. Worldwide. He entertains people all over the globe, and you can get tickets right now on the Game Time app. I saw it from as low as $169 for Pitbull on New Year's Eve. That's pretty good down there in Atlantic City. So there's that concert, and there are so many others and so many great sporting events that you can get with just two taps of your finger on the Game Time app and take advantage of their super deals or their amazing deals. They have so many tiers of great deals that will give you the best value for the row or the seat that you're sitting in. And of course, when you use the Game Time app, you're covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. And not to forget, the lowest price guarantee. Game Time can credit you 110% of the difference if you find a better price. All right. So there's event cancellation, there's job loss protection. Nobody does it better than Game Time. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code BIRDS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code BIRDS, BIRDS, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, Adam, let's talk about the Eagles and any kind of concerns or we might have or issues. We made it
Yep.
a case that it's just one loss. We're not going to overreact to anything. There were a couple of things that I thought were interesting that Greg Cosell brought to our attention when he did his Ask Greg Cosell, which we did on Monday night instead of Tuesday this week. And probably the biggest one was, without having seen the tape myself, usually I was expecting that we would talk about the offensive line, it not being their fault because the Commanders looked like they're sending 7, 8 guys, too many to block against the run. But Greg felt that the offensive line in situations where it should have played well and normally plays well did not play well in this game. And he even used the word got handled against a very, very stout and physical Washington defensive front. So that to me would be a little bit of maybe a long-term concern. I mean, obviously, when Hurts comes back, you're defended differently, but just the
Yes.
physicality of that Washington team, that Washington front against this Eagles offensive line, if they have to meet again in a playoff game.
Yeah, Johnny Newton, I mentioned this in the postgame show. He had a really good game, like
Yep.
very, very active. Frankie Luva was everywhere. They crashed the run. And the thing now, yeah, I'm not absolving the offensive line. They had their worst game of the season by far. They didn't play well.
Hmm.
But, the second half, I really thought that Kellen Moore could have helped them better. Remember, Barkley had 107 yards after the first quarter, and then only had, I think, like 40 some odd after that. And yes, as you nailed it, not having Hurts in the lineup just changes the way that you're defended. But Kellen Moore's got to spread things out. Like going with 12 personnel as much as he did, How about spreading them out? Widen the splits. Make Washington's defense spread out a little bit. They
Hmm.
crashed the run. It was like they were daring Kellen Moore to call pass plays, but he wouldn't do it. Now, was it because Kenny Pickett's ribs were bothering him?
Mm,
Don't know that. And
right.
Kellen Moore's not. I don't know if Kellen Moore's going to admit that, but fact of the matter is, it was a problem. I thought Kellen Moore could have helped them in the second half, and that was really the one issue that I had with Kellen Moore in that game. There've been 3 or 4 times this season where I'm like, man, could he do something to help out the offense a little bit? This was one of them. And by the way, this is an in-game adjustment. You can do this. I looked into it. You absolutely can. You just change your personnel groupings. That's all. It's not like they either go from 12 to 11. That's all. I mean, it's
Right.
they just you didn't want to do it.
Right. And you would have thought the way Grant Calcaterra was really struggling in the block that it would have been better to go
Yeah.
to a spread 11 and have him flexed instead of trying to run block. So Jason Avant made a good point too that coincides with what you're saying on Q&A. Jason said, they could have probably tried some more RPO game because you don't need a running quarterback to execute RPOs. It's either a
Yep.
running play, a play to your running back, or you pull it up and you throw a pass. You lose the zone read element where if you want to keep it because the defensive end crashes and run with your quarterback, sure, but you don't need that. That's not the key to an RPO. That's the key to a zone read. And if you're watching the defense just crash down on you, why don't you take advantage of that with some RPO? So that was another fair criticism I think that you could have. It is very difficult. We don't know the extent of how limited they felt they might have been because of the injury to Pickett. And when you're in the middle of a game and if you're running plays that you haven't practiced with Pickett before or you just haven't seen how he operates, then it's hard. You're restricted. There's a big difference between a backup quarterback coming in cold to play a game and a backup quarterback who's had a week to prepare. The expectation level should be different. In fact, if you go back and look, the first time Jalen Hurts had to replace Carson Wentz in 2020 in the middle of a game, he was like 4 of 15. Now you could say, yeah, well, that was a much worse team. Okay, well, Kenny Pickett was not 4 of 15. He was 14 of 24, but with a bunch of drops, it could have been 17 of 24 or 18 of 24. It looked a lot different. I'm not saying he was good. I just don't think he was awful. Like
Yeah.
the blowback you're getting for when you're just
Yeah.
thrust into a game. I also looked at the one Nick Foles went into when he had to place Carson Wentz against the Rams.
Oh,
He was six
yeah.
of 10 for 42 yards. You complete 6 passes for 42 yards, you're basically just dumping the ball off. That's a 4.2 yards per attempt. That's about as low as you'll ever see. So it's not easy for the quarterback or the coaches to adjust in the middle of a game like that. How you adjust when you have to practice the whole week and prepare, and we'll get into that with injuries, is a lot different. So I don't know what people were really expecting from Kenny Pickett.
Yeah, he did a yeoman's job. Look, a couple of throws were ducks. They just weren't throw with velocity. Now, what's interesting about Kenny Pickett is, so last year, in the 23 off season, the Steelers felt like his arm strength was better because he built up his upper body and it was noticeable in training camp in their offseason program. But he's never had a really good arm. It's slightly above average when he's at his best. But he wasn't driving the football real well. The ball down the right side to Brown, which AJ caught, it seemed like it took forever to get there. It got there, but it was short, and he did a good job of adjusting, and the DB didn't really see it.
Right, no doubt.
But overall, look, Pickett did the best he could. Yes, he had some bad mistakes. He had some good plays, and you can't blame him for Devontae Smith's one of the worst drops we've ever seen. I mean, Devontae's got great hands. It just, I don't know if he felt he heard footsteps or whatever. Just he dropped it. That's not Pickett's fault. But overall, they still scored 33 points. That's the thing with the offense. You could find fault with a lot of things on offense.
Hmm.
The running game in the second half was dreadful for the most part. And Pickett sometimes holding on the ball because that comes with what you were talking about. He gets so little work with the ones. The twos work with the twos in every NFL practice. That's just the way it is. So your timing is always not going to be there. And by the way, the pass targets have to know how the ball's coming out of his hands. Because
Hmm.
it's one thing as you were
Oh,
talking about,
great point. Jason
you
talked
know.
about that. Yep.
Okay. Ha,
Jason
ha,
thought
ha,
that some of these drops, especially the Devontae one,
okay.
were a byproduct, and this is a wide receiver who understands this more than anyone,
Sure. Sure.
of just seeing the ball coming out differently from a different angle at a different speed that you just haven't worked and repped and practiced with. Comfort and that symmetry between a quarterback and a pass catcher that you work on all year long. It's week 16. You just expect certain things and the ball to be there at certain times when you work with somebody. And then when it's somebody new, it changes.
Yeah, because that's the thing. In training camp, I'm trying to remember when I was there, maybe Pickett did work with ones a little bit, but again, in season, the ones, most teams don't give the twos work with ones. It's just the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the problem because it's not like, okay, well, the backup quarterback's going to come in. Let's bring all the starters out and he can play with his backups. It doesn't work that way. Like,
Right.
you
No.
know what I mean? It's just
Yeah.
you're not going to have your timing down. So that was certainly an issue. But again, the positive is they still scored 33. It was obviously different after Hurts left,
Mm-hmm.
and you saw the defense, just the way that they played against Pickett. But I would say this: there were some times Pickett was in a rhythm. He looked very serviceable for a backup quarterback. He was uneven, yes, but you could win with a guy like Kenny Pickett the way that he played.
That's the point. He gave you what you expect from your backup quarterback in that situation is just to try to hold the fort down and give you a chance to win. He gave them a chance to win. And on the Devontae Smith drop, Jason made a really interesting point that the fact that he sort of dropped it 3 times, right? It was like bang, 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 showed you
Yeah.
that it was not a concentration issue. He wasn't looking up the field for a touchdown or a first down and keeping his eyes in order to almost catch it 3 different times, your eyes have to be on the ball. So the concentration was there. He really just thinks it was a rhythm and timing thing with the backup in. So that makes a whole lot of sense. That's
Mhm.
going to happen. And that to me goes back to the fact that you suffered a fluky loss. It's not a big deal. If you're really looking to nitpick for a concern, you would say if Jalen Hurts can't play, whether it's this week or whatever, if he gets hurt again, can the Eagles still have a really functional, weaponized running game? Because that's what we saw not happen, especially in the second half. Greg made that point that the Eagles, for so long, even when they've struggled offensively in the passing game, have just waited for that one or two Barkley long run, right, which
Yep.
came against Washington the first game in the second half. They didn't really run the ball well
Fourth
until
quarter. Fourth
fourth
quarter they
quarter,
went for
right,
it. Yeah.
right. So maybe that's why the Eagles were just hell bent on still running into these big fronts because they just figured Barkley was going to pop one and put the game away. Can they run with more efficiency moving forward if they don't have Jalen?
See, and on your point about the RPO, that's a good point. There's certain things you can do in any time of a game with any quarterback. You could go more, as I said, more 11 versus 12, but because Pickett didn't practice with ones during the week, you can't be doing stuff like RPOs. It's specific. You have to have worked through that in practice. It's a little bit harder. So you're kind of limited to what you can do, but personnel groupings you could change because it's something that's common with any quarterback. So I think Kellen could learn from a situation like that. Losing your quarterback in game, I know it's not something he could really plan for, but it's
Hmm.
not like he didn't coach Dak Prescott when Dak got hurt. So and by the way, Sirianni could say to him, because Nick's an offensive coach, hey, I think we need to go with more 11. We need to spread them out. You could do that. I mean, Nick could do that.
Right,
So see what
right.
happens.
All right. Defensively, concerns. I mean, we did talk about the D line not really getting its pass rush going on. This is not a great offensive line that the Commanders have. They're not especially blessed at offensive tackle, and yet you didn't really see much from Sweaty, from Nolan Smith, from Jalex Hunt. I mentioned I think the Eagles got a little dose of their own medicine. It's really hard to defend a quarterback who can make movements plays like Jaden Daniels does. You have to rush the passer differently. And one thing that really jumped out to me, Adam, is that Jaden Daniels didn't have those kind of runs in the first game. He was.
He
Remember,
was
we all
hurt too.
thought he was hurt, and we weren't sure because they weren't. I think it's pretty clear that he was much healthier the second time around.
Oh, I mean, he was terrible. He played poorly against the Eagles in the first matchup.
Yeah.
The balls there were a couple there were a couple throws we isolated that were so short.
Yep.
Just wasn't driving the football because of his ribs. In this game, he looked great. I mean,
Oh, he drove the football all right.
yeah, he's got a good. He's so smooth and no, I'll say this though. Watching him this season, I've watched a little bit of the all 22 just to get a feel for him. Man, when he sometimes because he wants to hang in there and make the throw, there's just sometimes he doesn't move and the ball's not even it's way off. Like by the way, the pick was way off. It was the guy, the pass target in this past game over in the middle. The guy was open,
Hmm.
and he overthrew it. He does turn his body sometimes because I give him credit for having a slight frame. He wants to hang in there,
Yep.
which is like really good for a rookie quarterback.
Oh yeah.
But but let's not forget, Sweat missed 37 snaps in this game due to that ankle injury.
Hmm.
Quite frankly, I was surprised when he came back. I was like, wow, you just when a guy misses 3 quarters, he doesn't come back, but you give the guy credit, and we'll see
Yep.
if he's limited this week. And
Him and Davis, Jordan Davis came back
yeah,
too after getting hurt. So you give him
yep,
credit.
yep,
Yep.
yep, yeah. But again, he's limited to just really the run.
Right.
As Greg said that there was only one snap of third and seven or longer this season that Jordan Davis has played. So that kind of tells you what the coaches see. They're telling you he doesn't brush the passer. Although I would say this, he's had a couple nice rushes this season because he goes straight at the guy, puts his hands up, and the
Yeah.
who was the quarterback? Was it Derek Carr? Remember Derek Carr? He didn't know what to do because he couldn't see over. Davis, he put his hands in the air. And Jordan, how tall is Jordan Davis? 6'5", maybe.
He's a pretty big dude. Yeah, pretty tall
Yeah,
dude.
with his hands, with his arm length. I don't know
Oh
what
my
the.
God. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and Derek Carr didn't know what to do. He couldn't see. But yeah, they were limited. There's no question that they were limited with their pass rush, and that obviously gave Daniels a chance, and Daniels was dealing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So we'll see. We'll have to see. More going forward. If they play again in a playoff game, first round, 2-7 game,
Which would be in Philly. Yeah.
which would be in Philly, I think that would be somewhat of a concern. Is that this guy Daniels can make some real back-breaking type of, just like the Eagles. The Eagles have played a lot of one-possession games this year, and you can go back to a back-breaking run here and there by JalenHurts. That meant the difference. And obviously, Washington's well ahead of schedule. Wasn't there over/under for the season somewhere around 5.5 or 6?
6.5 or 7, depending on
Yeah.
yeah,
So
six
they
and a half or 7,
smashed
depending on
that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good story. And he's had a schedule there. It makes them ahead of schedule. Yeah, and look, there's so many quarterbacks. If you get obviously Lamar Jackson's the best of backbreaking runs, but Mahomes as a scrambler, he demoralizes defenses.
Yeah. He doesn't do it as much anymore, but when he
Yeah.
does, he picks. You're right. He's such a backbreaker.
Oh, and by the way, Russell Wilson killed the Eagles years ago when he was with Seattle. So
Oh
many
my God.
backbreaking scrambles. Josh Allen, holy smokes! But he's a sidewinder. I don't know if you study the way he runs, it's like to the right, to the left, and he's a very unique style. I don't think I've seen before.
Right.
And these it's so demoralized. Like the fourth quarter, the Eagles were defense was not on the field very much until the fourth quarter, and it seemed like they just, for whatever reason, couldn't gather themselves. And you mentioned Daniels just got to them. They got them badly.
Yeah. Just the last thing. Listen, I rewatched some of the stuff like CJ Gardner Johnson. I don't know what he said to get kicked out. Jason Avant made the point that there's a lot of trash talk in an NFL game, even today, and even with the new rules. So you really, really, really have to say the wrong thing for the referee to almost feel like personally offended and give you a taunting penalty. But the point to me, Adam, is that I get it that maybe it was a quick trigger by this referee. I don't know. I don't know what was said, so I can't really comment on it. But
Yeah.
I know that the Jalen Carter tap on the offensive lineman, and then the offensive lineman flopped, and they gave Carter unsportsmanlike. What that shows you is that those two guys have reputations, and they are marked
Mhm.
men, and that is not the referee's fault. That is not the league going soft's fault. That is those two guys sleeping in the bed that they make. All right, so they've got to be really careful going forward, knowing that they're marked, that they play confidently, brazenly, but not above the rules and not to the point where they're going to get themselves in trouble for something that they may be not even doing because they're marked.
Okay, couple
They got
things here.
to worry about floppers, especially Carter.
Yeah, and Carter's got hit for a couple this season with personal fouls. Here's the thing with the revised rule in recent years: two personal fouls, you're chucked. He has to know that. Gardner Johnson, he had the first one. You can't get another one. You just can't. You get thrown out. I mean,
Right.
you just can't. You can't do it, and you got to know that. And the competition committee, when they put this in, I remember that hearing the explanation. Um, Whether it was Rich McKay, who was the chairman of the competition committee, they told us about this at the owners meetings in March, whatever year they did it. It's because guys go over a line. They keep now what they're supposed to do, by the way, is just to warn the player.
Hmm.
At least that's what I recall. And I have no idea if Gardner Johnson was warned. And CJ, he went on X on Tuesday and apologized to the fans. Good for him. I mean, it's good. But bottom line is, you can't get chucked, man. You just can't. Think about this. If this happened in a playoff game,
That's my point is that you
yeah,
got to
you
know
know,
you're a marked man. So and it's easier said than done. You can be like, all right, I'm going to be better, but in the heat of these guys do these things in the heat of the moment. They don't premeditate it. CJ Gardner didn't say, I'm going to say this to this guy and that to that guy. He
but he
just goes
plays with an
there,
edge, though.
right?
He
Plays with an edge. You love
yeah.
the edge, but
Don't
you
go
love the
over it.
player being on the field. So
Yeah.
that's more important.
Yes. You need him. Yeah. And by the way, here's another problem. They had 10 penalties accepted in this game.
Accepted. Yep. Yep.
That's not good, man. That they've had a couple games here where they've been undisciplined. It's a very interesting team. You know, one of the things we've talked about is how greatly they've been disciplined this season. You know, the tackling has been, other than this game against Daniels. By the way, the run defense was phenomenal against Brian Robinson. He couldn't do anything running it. Now he caught it. He had a really good catch, but he couldn't. He fumbled it twice. They shut down McNichols and Rodriguez. It was just the discipline against Daniels. Okay, they got to look at that and make sure that the quarterback doesn't escape. But it the discipline last year, as we've talked about ad nauseum, is so bad against the run and guys not playing their gaps right. This was just a rare game that back end they weren't disciplined in the second half, particularly the fourth quarter. The communication was poor. Gardner Johnson being out didn't help, obviously. Where we've outlined it on the Greg Cosell show Inside the Tape, where CJ and DeJean and others have communicated so well. It's just and Mitchell gave up his first touchdown. This is just not a good game. But as you said earlier, and I totally agree, and I said this after in our postgame show, I'm not really worried about this game, and this is just an aberration.
Mhm.
I'd be shocked if they have another game like this. I really, they're really disciplined. They pride themselves on playing the right way. It's just it got away from them.
Yeah. Yeah. We're not saying we'd be shocked if the Eagles just lost, right? We're just if they
Right.
play
Just
like
play like
that.
this.
Yeah.
Yes.
That to me
Yeah.
would be,
Yeah.
yeah.
Correct.
If they get 5 turnovers and lose, that would be really like
That's
produce five
crazy.
turnovers
By
and
the way,
lose.
the 5 turnovers plus 3 in the turnover margin. That's bad. That shows the lack of just the lack of discipline on defense. It's just not good. And as we said earlier, when you put up 33, probably 9 times out of 10 you're going to win. And here's the other thing, and I've said this forever on the show, 7 years. You can throw in 30-degree weather. That doesn't mean anything.
Right.
It's wind, and it wasn't windy. I know for a fact it wasn't windy. Now, why was Jake Elliott short on that kick? I have no idea.
Well,
I can't.
cold can impact the weight of a ball. So
Yes,
that because his kick was not
that might
left
have
or
been it.
right. It was
Yes.
it was straight on line and it just sort of
Sure.
died. So it could have
That
been
ball was heavy, right? On
right.
your point, it doesn't for throwing the ball. It doesn't really matter,
Right.
but kicking it clearly mattered. In fact, do we think that's part of why Braden Mann's kickoffs were short? Because that was really bad. Well, we
I
have to
have to
mention the
think
special
that.
teams,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
not so special teams. What the hell was it? The kickoffs were terrible.
Yeah,
The kickoff
why didn't
coverage.
they just deflate the football? Like it's been
Oh,
done before.
jeez. Sorry, Brady, but yeah, the kickoff coverage was awful.
hmm
What Luke McCaffrey, Christian McCaffrey's younger brother, was really good. It was, and I don't know.
Well, I have a theory on that is that
Yeah, I wish
you're
Tyler Brown would speak. Special
yeah,
team.
that would be nice. You're without although I think Michael Clay can probably address it at least, but you're without Ben Van Sumeren. Oren Burks had to be thrust into the game to play more because of the injury to who got hurt. Why am I blanking? I know
Well,
Oren
shit.
Burks was out there, wasn't he? Didn't
Yeah.
he was out there for
Nico,
some reason. Either way.
didn't N'Kobe got
Jacoby
hurt?
came out for a little bit,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
So
Will
you got
Shipley got hurt. Also,
Will
Will
Shipley.
Shipley
That was going to be
coverage.
my
Yeah,
third.
it's a
Will
big one.
Shipley got hurt. Now, those are like your key special teamers there.
Maybe
So
that was it. Yeah,
yeah,
it was
and then
bad.
Washington's actually been pretty good in special teams this year as well. But no, you're right. They've got to be better. Trotter picked. I never saw it, but I guess Trotter picked up a personal foul penalty as well
Yes.
on special teams.
Oh, by the way, yeah, that offside on that offside on the kickoff. How do you have that?
Yeah,
It's
that's
just,
not good. That's
yeah.
that's part of the flukiness of it. That's the first time all year, right?
Yeah, I know. It's just I think it's one of these games they were kind of overdue to have a just a bad game.
Exactly. Exactly.
Crazy they had not lost since late September. It's just by the way, hats off to this football team. That's in this day and age with injuries and all sorts of challenges and Sirianni and his staff, we have to credit them. We try not to overreact on the show with a loss, and we didn't. After that, we were kind of like, matter of fact, it's not a big deal. And
Mm-hmm.
you and I just brought up some of the problems. We didn't go into it too in depth on the post game show, but today's show we're able to.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all correctable. The I would be very surprised if the lack of discipline in the back end happens again. Now, Gardner Johnson gets chucked. That obviously is a problem. They've been so good in communicating, like really lights out. And the coaching, as we've said all season on defense, especially, has been phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
It's the stuff that, and I get, see, when Sirianni said, I have to do a better job, what he's talking about is clearly this lack of discipline. There's a saying in coaching, because I've heard this from coaches forever. If it's happening, you're allowing it, whether you like it or not, whether it's subconscious or not, you're allowing it. You're clearly not, you're not getting to your players somehow.
Right.
This can't happen again. And Nick will correct it. And that's what he's really talking about.
Excellent stuff. All right, let's go on to injuries. Before that, let's pause and hear a word from our great friends at Sky Motor Cars.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schiller, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
Stopping the Sky Motor Cars out there in Westchester, PA. Make sure you tell them Adam and Geoff sent you. You will get phenomenal customer service. You'll get a great deal. They'll take care of you because you're in with Adam and Geoff. Just say you're in with Adam and Geoff. They will exactly know what to
ITB.
do.
Yeah.
ITB, Inside the Birds. And if not, just make sure you visit their website. Take advantage of looking at all their great inventory. It's not just buying a car. You might be selling your car. There are so many opportunities to do great business with Sky Motor Cars. All right, as we look at injuries, we'll go with the Eagles injuries first here. Adam, presented, of course, by our friends at Stretch Zone. JalenHurts, concussion, and Kenny Pickett, rib. So obviously we've got the quarterbacks. I mean, depending on what happens over the next 24, 48 hours, we could be having a conversation about Tanner McKee by Friday or even when we do our pregame show with Greg Cosell. Let's hope it doesn't get to that.
Yeah. And the thing with McKee is he
No offense to McKee, by the way.
yeah, I remember in training camp watching him. He's not as stiff as he used to be because he's really tall, lanky,
Agreed.
and he didn't move very well overall. But I like when Kellen Moore roll him out. I was like, wow, that he looked a little mobile there. That was interesting. But the preseason wasn't great for him. It was overall. He's a guy because what happens particularly in this town, you can go back to AJ Feely. AJ was a great story. That when he came in after, let me see, Donovan got hurt, and then
Detmer got hurt.
Yeah, Detmer dislocated his elbow.
Yep.
He came in, and it was a great story. And somehow the Eagles got a second-round pick from our friend Rick Spielman when Rick was the GM of the Dolphins, and give Joe Banner and whoever was involved with that one credit.
Yeah.
And Andy, obviously.
I think the Eagles returned the favor when they gave Rick Spielman Justin Jefferson in 2020. So.
Oh, geez, that's the point. Turn the knife a little bit. Yeah, wow, that's true. 2020. But so Hurts left after 12 snaps. He is in the protocol. He's in the 5-step protocol. So here's the key here, as we don't talk about this much because the Eagles haven't had a lot of guys with concussions this season, but a couple of them. So let's update this. So basically, it's a 5-step protocol, 5-step process. The one that's not talked about enough is, you and I have talked about this. If you see the guy out of practice, that's a good thing because he could see daylight. That's huge because I've talked to a lot of players who've had serious concussions. Remember, a concussion, even the lightest one, is a brain injury. You can't minimize that. But if the guy's not out of practice for, say, 2 days, that means he clearly is having problems with light sensitivity. You don't want that. That's a problem. So if the reporters see him at practice later today or Thursday, that's a good thing that he's moving. He's able to move and he could be out of practice. But the key is in this 5-step process by Friday to be at least at phase 4 non-contact training drills. That means he's 1 step away from 5, which is full football activity. And then all he would need is the final clearance from the neurologist and make sure the team medical staff is on board. So if he's limited Thursday, if he just says limited, he's up to phase 4. And that's really good. Now, as we've said in recent weeks, and this happened last week, the Commanders had two players who had suffered concussions the week before, the Sunday before, Zach Ertz and Jeremy Chin. Both played against the Eagles. So keep
Yep.
that in mind.
Yeah. Yeah. I was a little, when you hear nothing within 24 hours, just like, any report, he's doing good, he's doing well. You, I just hope he's okay. I just hope he was okay because concussions are no joke, man. And you just want forget about football. I just hope as a human being, Jalen Hurts is okay because it was the referee looked at him. This doesn't
Yep.
happen a lot. Sometimes it's the people who are watching who say you have to tell the referee send this guy to the sideline because we just saw a hit on the replay and we don't like what we saw. The referee, you could tell, looked at him, and I think Jalen kind of gave him a thumbs up, but the referee was like, "Go to the sideline." And then he went from the medical tent to the locker room, and then you didn't see or hear from him again that day. So I just really hope he's okay.
Remember, he put his helmet on and he wanted to go back in, and
Yeah,
the
yeah,
trainer sent him back to the locker room,
yeah.
and that was it. Usually, when the players go back to the locker room, they don't come out with concussion.
Right,
Well, you're not allowed to if you have a concussion, but if they're if they think that they need more evaluation, they go back to the locker room. More often than not, they don't get cleared.
right.
So that was it. This is the thing with the quarterback position because they're the ones who are holding on to the football. You you always worried, and then when Jalen, he dove when he should have slid. I mean, that's the thing that you don't want.
Yep.
I know people are upset about that. He's got to do that. Michael Vick would. Remember, Vic,
Ugh.
Vic for a long time. He refused to slide.
Yeah, it was frustrating. Didn't they try to teach him how to
Yes.
I'm trying to think. I think in Atlanta they brought in a baseball player at the time who
Did
was
they?
really good at stealing bases and tried to give him a lesson on how to slide the right way, and it didn't work.
Do we
Unfortunately.
see them sliding a bunch of? It wasn't just would have been the quarterbacks, but maybe other players. I think it was here in training camp over the last couple of years. They had a sliding exercise. I could have sworn I saw that. I'll
It's
have to ask Andrew.
possible.
Yeah.
It was Terry Pendleton.
Oh wow, number
Who
nine,
yeah, that's who I
Braves.
just Googled.
Yeah,
It was Terry
there
Pendleton
you
who was,
go.
oh man, what a
Good
great
call,
player
man.
Terry Pendleton was, man.
Very underrated for the Cardinals
Very,
and Braves.
very
Yeah.
underrated player, but for the Cardinals and the Braves. But anyway, back on track. So we'll know more today when they have their practice. They'll send out, it depends on whether or not they actually have a walkthrough or real practice. Either way, they'll send out a report or an estimation of a report, and we should get a better idea.
That's right.
I'm both Jalen Hurts and Kenny Pickett with the ribs. And of course, you mentioned Tanner McKee, Adam. I do hope he does have a stronger arm than Kenny
Very
Pickett.
strong.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I hope by next spring, because the weird thing is Kenny's still under contract next year, but you would
Yep.
like to see Tanner get a real shot to compete for the number two job and not just you're the number three because you're not Kenny Pickett, you're not a first round pick. I don't know. We're looking too far ahead here, but I would like to see Tanner McKee get an honest shot to compete for that backup job.
Well, no, it's interesting. You might remember that he actually got some work with the twos in training camp. They're
I
smattering
do
in them.
remember that. Yep. Yep.
Reporters are like, "Wait, what is this about?" And it was very limited, very limited.
Yeah.
But that may help him next year. And McKee, yeah, wow, next year will be his third year of his contract, and good for the Eagles. And if you recall, it was his preseason, his year one, which put him on the roster because every NFL team gets preseason tape, not practice tape, of course, but preseason tape, we know it was against deep backups, but the point is, you saw him spin it, and it was kind of like, wow, oh,
Yeah.
wow, you could drive the football.
He can.
Uh, yeah, and look behind this line.
With those weepons, right? If he
Yeah, I mean,
could
you just never
distribute
know,
it,
but
yeah.
we need to relax a little bit. Kenny Pickett, by the way, is way more mobile. So certainly saw this in training camp.
Hmm.
But look, we'll see what happens. It's kind of a weird deal as they get ready to host the Cowpokes on Sunday.
All right. So that is the quarterback situation, of course, on offense. Britton Covey, they've been really, really careful with him because he's been practicing but not playing. And that's a neck injury, so I totally get it.
Yep.
You really want to be and honestly, I do think the fact that they have Cooper DeJean and Anaya Smith, if they ever wanted to use him, gives them the insurance where they don't have to feel that they should rush him. I'm just wondering. I think I'm gonna look into this.
Can't real
Why
quick.
would
You
you
can't
full
rush him.
practice a guy though? But
Yeah,
but not think he's not ready to play.
No, it's all medical. Just so you know, the coach
Medical.
staff
It could be medical. Right. Right.
yeah, it's totally medical. The coach staff has nothing to do with it. It's totally he gets clear or he doesn't. It's a neck injury.
Right.
You got to get cleared for contact. If it gets cleared for contact, he's playing. It's just
That's what I really meant to say is
yeah,
what is
yeah.
the medical staff seeing that they're okay with him practicing but not playing? Is it just a timetable that they have and it's got to be you need to do this for 3 weeks for us to really know?
Could be. Yeah,
Is
it's a
there
fair point.
something
Could
that
be.
in the
Yeah.
treatment that they're saying,
Yeah.
you can practice, but you're not ready to take a hit?
Right. Yeah, it's as you said, it's a neck injury, so that's it. And it is odd, which is it's very rare for a player to practice fully for a number of days and not get cleared.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got to get cleared for contact, and that's going to be the key here. So, um, boy, he is a dynamic punt returner. I know Jaheim's been very good, by the way, not to take anything from him, but Covey was best returner in football last year.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, and we'd mentioned this in training camp, him and Hurts got some really good chemistry. You saw the game that he got hurt. I think was it was it against Atlanta?
It's been a while now, so I don't remember the last game that he played in, but I do just remember when he's out there, the Hurts will target him.
Yeah, in short area, man. The kid's got good quicks after the catch. Yeah, in that Atlanta game, he did have I know it was only 4 yards per catch, but he did catch all 6 targets.
How many catches do you think Jahan Dotson has this year?
12.
Probably. I should check.
Yeah,
I should have checked before asking you, but
by the way, I gotta say this. Olamide Zaccheaus, I look, I don't know why they didn't want to bring him back. It was not his fault last year.
Mm-hmm.
Passing game was a train wreck last year. That was a mistake. The guy started games for Atlanta. Last year they could not get the offense going. It had nothing to do with him playing 11 personnel, and he was the guy, and he didn't play well. It had nothing to do with it. The passing game was not very good last season comparatively.
Yeah, and by the way, you nailed it. Jahan Dotson has 12 catches for 100.
I had no idea, really.
Do you know who has more catches and more catches than Jahan Dotson? Kenny Gainwell. He has 13 catches.
Yeah.
Kind of crazy.
Only 13 for Gainwell, huh?
Only, yeah, which is also kind of low. But I mean, like the top 5 guys in this offense have basically hoarded.
I get it.
All
I
the
know.
And Grant Calcaterra is like number 6, and he's got 21 catches for 254. But you could, as much as I was a skeptic of the Jahan Dotson trade, which people know that I was saying that this is not going to be what you think it's going to be, I would not have thought that Grant Calcaterra was going to have more than twice as many yards as Dotson, way more than twice as many yards, receiving yards as Dotson. So that's been interesting.
Well, he had to learn the offense to start the season. I mean, that's a completely different offense than Cliff Kingsbury. I understand that part of it, but
yeah,
man, it just and they're heavy. Look, the other thing is I'm sure Kellen Moore didn't know this. He didn't know he'd be running so much 12 personnel. That's not really his thing, but he's had to do it. You got this great quarterback.
Right.
I do wonder. Because the tight ends struggled mightily, by the way, in this last game blocking. It was by far the worst game they've had this season blocking.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's interesting. It looked good in the first quarter. Then after that, it really regressed. As Greg told us on the chat with our Patreon members that the Titans didn't block well,
right,
overall.
Right.
So I do wonder, will Kellen say, okay, you know what? We need to play more 11. We need to spread these guys because you just assume Mike Zimmer is a veteran. Him and Paul Gunther is his right-hand man. You think they're going to try to do the same thing that Washington did.
Yeah, well, I mean, it worked against the Steelers. They played a ton of spread empty out of 11. They had everybody flexed out and just up tempo. Again, that's tough to do on your backup to run no huddle, right? And no protection against a good Washington front when you haven't really practiced it. But now you have a week. If it has to be Kenny Pickett, maybe you can do those things. Other injuries to Eagles defense, Adam. We've got Josh Sweat. We know came out for 37. This is rare, and this is why we give these guys a lot of credit. When you miss 37 snaps of a game, you're usually not going to play. I mean, there's only so many snaps.
Shocked that he came back. What's funny is he's number 19, right? I think he's 19.
Yes.
And Dean's 17. I'm like, is that Josh Sweat? What is he doing back? Because he got hurt very early.
Yep.
And then he came back, and then Bryce Huff with the wrist surgery. Last week is his first week back. Typically, from wrist surgery, it's 6 to 8 weeks is the recovery time. This is the 6th week, so maybe he plays this week. And I know they didn't play a lot in the first 3 quarters, and the defense is on the field a lot in the 4th quarter. But just to get another guy on the field, and Jalen Hunt is good as the story he's been being thrown in their way before he should be.
Yep.
because of Huff's injury and BG's injury. You'd like to get a guy who's getting paid 17 million a year just to get on the field, get him more comfortable, because that was the issue. This is a defense he never played in. He was a hand in the dirt pass rusher with the Jets. This is different for him.
Definitely. All right. So Bryce Huff, like you just said, well, they'll get him back and add to some depth. Now, by the way, soon the forecast for Sunday is much warmer. It's going to be in the mid 50s, but they're
Really?
also calling for
rain.
rain.
Yeah.
Lots of rain. So this could be a kind of an ugly, muddy, disgusting kind of late, or I was going to say late winter. It's really early winter because it's not technically winter yet, but late season muck it
How
up
the
type
hell's
of
it in
game.
winter?
I know,
Oh,
it's kind of crazy. It's been like 5
ridiculous.
degrees outside. All right, so that's Eagles injuries presented by our friends at Stretch Zone. And Adam, I know you gave out, I assume by now, your
Yes.
gift cards from Stretch Zone. That, hey, listen, just because it might be past Christmas or past Hanukkah's got 8 nights, you could still give the gift of gift cards from Stretch Zone tomorrow, the next day, or just give it to a friend.
Yeah, you can go to stretchzone.com, by the way, and you could order the ones that you could do it 2 ways. You could just have it mailed, or you could get it sent to them instantly. Like, when on Amazon, when you give out gift cards, you could time it. You could have it sent right now. You could wait a day, whatever you want to do. And I bought 3 8-packs, and you have to decide, or the person you get them for decides whether they want to go there once or twice a week.
Mm-hmm.
But I go twice a week because I like to spread it out. Because my feeling is, and this is I just hit my 3rd-year anniversary. A good stretch lasts with stretching a good 48 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Every once in a while, if I go what I call it, because as you know, the method is 3 light stretch, 5, then the numbering system, 5 is moderate, and 7 is a good strong stretch. I go for 9 sometimes because if I need it, I'm willing to take the stress on my muscles to open them up. And I did that this past week. I had not had my hips done in I don't know how long. But I don't know about you, but the one that's the hardest, it's not quads anymore for me. I actually strangely like the quad stretch.
Mm-hmm.
The IT band stretch is a leap.
It is. It's very difficult. They actually, really because of the way they do the IT band stretch, which is they usually take your leg and L shape it and then move it across your body. I'm so stiff in my hamstrings that I have to have them like extra bend my leg so that it's not stretching my hamstring at the same time. Because the first time they tried doing it, they're like, "Do you feel this stretch in your ID band? Does it feel good?" I go, "No, it's hurting my hamstring." They're like, "Whoa, that's not supposed to happen."
Yes.
I had to
by the way,
change the angle that they were stretching me at. Yeah,
and they're communicating, right? The practitioners always communicating. You have to communicate with them. But anyway, so the IT band it could hit the outside of your ankle, and it's open it up. But I could tell you, if you're a pickleball player, I know there are a lot of them listening, racquetball, squash, like Andy Reid, by the way, pickleball like you, or tennis with me, I cannot tell you how much better it feels when you play that day or the next day.
Mm-hmm.
Go, wow, my loose, because my IT band, the only first time I ever heard of it was when Wentz tore it,
right?
Which is so rare when he tore his ACL because he dove.
Mm-hmm.
And then the traps that's my biggest challenge for me is my traps. If you're watching on YouTube, my outer arm,
yeah,
and my deltoid, I have a constant chronic soreness with it. So I get my traps done every time I go. And what happens is you lay on your back and your fingers crawl on the table that you're sitting on.
Mm-hmm.
It's stretched like this. And I also have my neck done. I love the neck stretch, man.
Yeah, the neck stretch is nice. It's very good. Yep. Almost like a massage. Yeah, it's really good.
Correct.
All right. So Stretch Zone, stretchzone.com. Where can they sign up and where can they go, Adam?
All right. 12 locations in Pennsylvania, New Jersey. On the main line, Haverford near Suburban Square, literally across from it. Devon near the Whole Foods. There's a what's the workout place? Orange Theory or whatever it's called. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what it's called.
Mm-hmm.
It's also in there. I saw that there. See my man Tyler McGrogan, who's a great dude, man. He's a big hockey guy, by the way, if you're a Flyers fan. Also Eagles, of course. Exton in the Whiteland Town Center. See my man Austin or Nick. Nick, by the way, went to Penn State. Emily or Madison, they do a great job. Or her son, the manager, is a great guy. South Philly near Graduate Hospital on 25th and Watch. Montgomery County, Elkins Park Plaza, which is on Alderdick Road, of course. And then Upper Dublin, Dresser area in the Promenade near Upper Dublin, off 611, Feasterville, and Lower Southampton Village near you in New Jersey, Cherry Hill and Evesham Road. I know that's where you go usually.
Mm-hmm.
Mount Laurel where Greg Cosell is in Centerton Square, across from. By the way, it's across from NFL Films in the Wegmans. I've been there many times. We're a lot of places to shop there, by the way. Franklin Lakes and Franklin Ave, Northfield, Tilton Road, and Princeton, Nassau Park, Pavilion, stretchzone.com to sign up, or you could call one of those locations if you want.
Let's get into the Cowboys injuries, Adam.
A
And
lot of them.
yeah, there are a lot of them. And there always are. It seems like there always are, especially this year when the Eagles had to play them. They were all beat up. Dak Prescott, we know he's on injured reserve with the right hamstring. He had the surgery. Cooper Rush has been starting. And by the way, this is another example. Cooper Rush has been a pretty good backup for the Cowboys.
Better lately.
Yeah, and when he had to go in the middle of a game cold against Atlanta when Prescott got hurt, he's 13 to 25. He completed 52% of his passes for 115 yards and 1 touchdown and a 77.9 pass rating. Not too different than the numbers that Kenny Pickett just put up. So, and then after that loss against the Eagles, where they were just completely undermanned and outclassed and not good enough, he's since won 4 of 6 games. So the numbers have gotten better because he's been the guy and he's practiced every week and they've gotten healthier around him. And in fact, his last 2 games, he's over 100. He's had 108.3 and 119 passer ratings in their last 2 games, which were both wins. So he's playing better.
Oh, he was dealing. In fact, they never trailed against the Bucks. I cannot believe. I'm so disappointed in the Buccaneers. Anyway,
Yeah, I'm shocked.
I picked them to win divisions. What's that?
I still think they're going to win the division.
I hope they do, man. Although I like watching Michael Penix, man. He can deal it. He had a really good Senior Bowl week. So Zach Martin, he had ankle surgery. He's out. This kid, Brock Hoffman, who's undrafted free agent, has been with a couple teams out of 2022. He starts for him. And then this is bizarre. We like to give you the lineup changes. So I know Tyler Guyton, he wasn't on the injury report last week, but he had been dealing with a couple injuries.
Mm-hmm.
He played, but he didn't start. Chuma Edoga, who's a journeyman backup, left tackle, right tackle. He started for Guyton. Guyton only played 7 snaps in the game. I'm curious. We'll find out when we do the Friday show. When we update lineup changes and injuries, we'll find out what the heck happened. So look, they've had their offensive line's gone through some changes this season.
Yeah,
but a bunch of guys get hurt, and then defensively is really where all the injuries are, particularly in the secondary. This is again. I cannot believe the Bucs lost last week. So Trayvon Diggs, he had another serious knee injury. He's done. You know who started? This guy's at what we call a young journeyman, Amani Owarie, who played at Penn State, who was drafted by the Lions, who the Eagles know very well.
Yep.
He started last week for Diggs on the outside. Overshown, poor guy. Marvin Overshown, second bad injury, right ACL. Loafa was a 3rd-rounder rookie, started for him. And then for Eric Kendricks, who played for Zimmer in Minnesota, another guy who played for Minnesota, Nick Vigil, who's been on a bunch of teams. You might. It's funny if you type his name, your autocorrect might say Virgil. It did to me because I was getting some information on this guy.
Not the former WWF wrestler turned heel Virgil.
Yeah,
right?
passed away. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize. I forgot he passed away.
Yeah,
I think referee who turned heel.
Mike Jones, I think that's his real name. Anyway, I know these real names of the wrestlers, but Nick Vigil, who's was really a good player for the Bengals, has really bounced around with a bunch of teams. So he started for Kendricks, had a calf injury last week. They're kind of running out of defenders. They're a lot of guys who would never play are playing, and then Chauncey Golston, who's in his 4th year, who's DeMarcus Lawrence's backup. Golston continues to start, and Lawrence isn't coming back. He had that bad midfoot sprain. He's been hurt a lot, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, no. They're going to be definitely without Lawrence. They're going to be definitely without Diggs, and definitely without Overshown. And then if they have to play Nick Vigil, there should be really good opportunities for the Eagles to get their run back going. Despite how successful Dallas has been, they've really been outscoring teams more than playing good defense.
And by the way, throwing the ball, depending obviously who the quarterback is, but just because of Owarie playing, this is a guy who's going to be targeted. It's like Igbohagany, the corner for Washington.
Yep.
Eagles targeted him the first matchup. They know this because they get advanced reports from their pro personnel staff. They know they have a pretty good idea who's going to be in there and who's not going to be in there. Mm-hmm. And there's, as you said, there's a lot of opportunity. They're going to be down a minimum of 4 starters for this game, or actually 3, and then 4 depending on Kendrick. So there's going to be some opportunities to get things done here.
All right. Well, there'll be opportunities for us to talk about that moving forward, as we will this week, as the content machine rolls on here at Inside the Birds. That's going to do it for this edition of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles intel. And once again, happy holidays to everybody. For Adam Caplan, I'm Geoff Mosher. We'll catch you on the next episode. Be sure to check out our friends at PHLSportsNation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at PHLSportsNation.com and on Twitter at PHLSportsNation.